We have our first level finished, but when you start the game, it just starts directly, and when you get killed, there's no way to restart. So we're going to need some kind of menus in here. If you've played around with Unity at all and gone into the forums and read messages and things, there's people who have complained about the GUI tools in Unity for eons or so, but the tools that are available in Unity are good enough for the basics, and that's all we need for this game. So run over to the Pixel Nest website and grab the assets that you're going to need for this, and the link to that is right up above this video. I already grabbed them. I grabbed this picture called, well, I call it menu background.ping, and if you go grab it off of the Pixel Nest website, it's actually called background.ping. You're going to have to rename it because there's already a background.ping here. Now you could put it in a different folder, but I just found it easier to just rename the asset itself. The other one you're going to be grabbing is logo.ping, and then in a little bit you'll also be grabbing some code for a new script that we'll be doing. So let's take menu background.ping, throw it into textures, and logo.ping, and throw it into textures as well. And then just check and make sure those are both of texture type of sprite, and it looks like they both are, so that's good. The next thing we need to do is create a new scene, because our opening menu is going to be a scene all by itself. So let's go ahead and create a couple sprites in here. And the first one, we will just call it background. And the second one is going to be called logo. And so background, we'll go ahead and set the sprite for the sprite renderer to this menu background image. We'll position it at 0, 0, 1, and we'll make the size 2 by 2 by 1. And then for the logo, select it. We'll copy the logo texture into there. We'll position it at 0, 2, and 0. And set the scale on it to 0.75, 0.75, and 1. So it should look like this down here. In fact, we can go ahead and run that and see that nothing happens. We don't have a button put in there yet. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to need a new script, and the new script is going to be called menu script. And I'm going to double click that, open it up in MonoDevelop, and copy and paste. Now to grab this code, use the link above this video to go to the correct web page and do a search on menu script, and you'll find it. And once it's pasted in here, there's basically one thing that happens on GUI, and it draws a button, and when it is clicked, or if the button is clicked, then it'll do application.loadLevel, and it will load our first stage. So I'm going to save that, run back over to Unity. Let's go ahead and save this scene. So under File menu, choose Save Scene. And we're going to put this actually inside of the assets, not just inside the assets folder, but also in this scenes folder here. And we're going to call it menu. Now that we have that script, we need to actually get it into the scene. And so we're going to create an empty game object, and we're going to call it scripts, and then we're going to drag menu script and attach it to that in the scene. And let's go ahead and run this, and now we have our starting menu, and we have a start button that actually, when you hover over it, it actually has a little bit of animation to it, and when we click that, nothing happens. What doesn't happen? Okay, well, down here in the error message area, it says level stage 1 couldn't be loaded because it's not been added to the build settings. Okay, so the way to fix that is up under the File menu, choose Build Settings, and this is where you have to actually put all the scenes that are going to be in the build. You have to add them in there, and the easiest way to add them is drag and drop. So over here from Project, inside of Scenes, we're going to drag Menu in there, and we're going to drag Stage 1 in there, and that's all we have. So we can close this window, and now let's go ahead and run it again. There's our start button. Let's try it this time. All right, and we are up and running and playing with our first menu. All right, so that's good, but we also need now the ability to restart once we've died or actually go back to the main menu. So let's go ahead and add that now. Make sure that this scene has been saved, and then go ahead and load up stage 1. And we're going to create a new script, and this one's going to be called Game Over Script. So over on the Pixel Nest website, do a search for Game Over Script, and you will get to the proper place to grab the code. And the code is going to look really familiar. Let me double click here to go over into Mono Develop and paste it in here. This is a lot like the code that we were just looking at. There's the if GUI button, and if it's pressed, then it will do this. And here's a second GUI button, and if it's pressed, it will do this right here. So it's almost the same thing. We just have 2 buttons instead of 1. I'm going to save that, run back over here. Now in the player script, we have to instantiate that new script when the player dies. So I'm just going to go down here, and there's like 3 lines. So I'm actually going to type it in here. So right down here at the bottom, we're going to do void on destroy. transform.parent.gameObject.add component game over script. So this is a little bit different than what we've been doing before, in that this is not actually attached to anything. We don't put the game over script up into the hierarchy or anything like that. We actually leave it down with everything else of the other project files. But when the player is destroyed, then this line will be called, and it will actually add the component. It'll add the game over script to the parent of the player. Well, what is the parent of the player? Let's look at that. Save this, switch back over here. The parent of the player is the foreground layer. The game over script will actually be attached to the foreground layer when the player dies, and we'll actually see that happen in a few minutes here. So let's change the player. I think we have 1 billion or so HP. Let's change that to 4 to make sure that he actually dies, so we can see if this is actually going to work. I'm sure that it will. Okay, you got to hit at least once there. Okay, and so I wish I would have turned the sound down. We've got our retry button and our back to menu button. Let's go ahead and try this one first. And we're back here. We can start again. We get killed real fast here. Okay, I can't run into bullets. I'm going to try it. There we go. All right, and so we'll hit the retry button. And we are going again. Okay, let's go ahead and stop that. We've got the menu up and running. And I told you I would show you the script being attached to the foreground. And to do that, we uncheck Maximize on Play. And just to save my sanity, I'm going to mute the background music itself. Let's go ahead and run this. And as soon as, let me run them into some bullets here. Okay. And as soon as the poopy are off the screen, let me scroll this back to, here's foreground. And when I click on that and we look over here in the inspector, you can see it now has the game over script attached to it. Now, one more thing before we're done here, and let me save this scene and switch back over to the menu scene. The start button here is not what you would call a pretty button, but you can do something about that. So let's go ahead and look at a new GUI skin. Let's create a new folder here in the project, and this one's going to be called Resources. And it appeared down inside a scene, so let me just drag it back out. All right, so we've got Resources, and now we're going to create a GUI skin. Let me pull this up so you can see it on the screen here. There we go, right down at the bottom. GUI skin. And we will just call it GUI skin and go with that for now. And so over here on the right in the inspector, you can see lots of different things. What we're dealing with is a button. And so here is normal, background, text color, hover, background, and text color. So you can put texture inside of that. Also down here, there's a place for font size. We can bump that up. Let's just bump it up to 24. and see what that does. Let's try it out here. That doesn't look any larger. Oh, you know why? It's because it's not larger, because we aren't telling it to use this GUI skin yet, but we can fix that. So we need to go into the menu script that we created last time, and there it is right there. And we're just going to add a couple little things here. The first one is private variable of type GUI skin, and we'll just call it skin. And then we need to do something at the start when this thing is first loaded up. And all we're going to do is say skin equals resources dot load, and then the name that we gave our GUI skin, which was GUI skin because we're clever like that. And we're loading it as GUI skin, and that's almost it. One more thing we need to write down here. We need to say GUI.skin equals skin. Perfect. Okay, I think so. Save that, switch back over here, and now if we go to GUI skin and do the font size at 24 instead of the 0, which meant use the default, hopefully this will be larger. Yes, okay, so that worked very well. And let's go ahead and change the background. Instead of using what's there, you can use a graphic. Now, I don't have a button graphic here, but I'm just going to use the background, the cloud thingy, and just drop it right in here and see what that does. Just a test, mind you. Okay, so it's there. And if we wanted to actually use that, we can change the text color, and I just clicked text color there, and it just popped up. And we can just change. Oh, look at it, does that on the fly. I didn't even know that. Okay. So there we go. We could go to a blue maybe, and something like that. All right. So we could use that for our button. Of course, if we really wanted to use this, we would probably want to change the hover to do something else. But you can do that by going over to the inspector. There's hover. You can change that. You can change it when it's active, focused, and all of this stuff. There's even a border. So you can play around and do a ton of different things. If you've got an artistic eye or know somebody who is kind of artistic, you could probably create some pretty good-looking buttons, even with this rudimentary GUI stuff that is right here inside Unity. All right, that is going to be it for this video. Now, so far you've done parallax scrolling with 3 background layers. We've done particles, graphics and sounds. We've got a title screen. It's a shoot 'em up game with 1 player, multiple enemies, only 1 level so far, but that's no big deal. But there's one thing that's missing now, and that is deploying this game, and we'll get into that in the very next video.